Hi, I'm Jason,
And I'm Laura.
and we took early retirement this year to live and travel on our camper. And right now, we are in the Pacific Northwest. That's where we've been for the last couple weeks.
Yeah. After we left the Cascades in Eastern Washington, we headed for the coast.
Mhm.
It was the first time either of us have been to the Pacific Northwest. We were really excited to get to the ocean. That was like a milestone for sure.
Yeah.
It was a sunny Friday morning, and we drove through this really narrow, winding road across along the coast
Mhm.
to Larrabee State Park. That was our first place that we stayed on the coast. So, of course, the first thing we did, take a short hike down to the beach, and it was beautiful. We saw rocks with really interesting erosion patterns. There
Mhm.
was tide pools with cool little creatures in it, and of course, the ocean waves were lovely to listen to.
Nice way to start our Pacific Northwest adventures. We drove into Bellingham to check out the farmers market. So that was pretty cool. Bellingham's a neat town. It's got a harbor with a bunch of sailboats and fishing boats. And the farmers market had a really neat vibe. I think like all farmers markets in Washington, the produce was amazing. There was like guys on roller skates and musicians busking and some guy with this crazy thing he'd created to blow huge bubbles for the kids. And there were fresh oysters. There's a bunch of oyster
Mm-hmm.
farms here, and the oysters were amazing. Like we got some oysters Rockefeller at the farmers market that were incredible.
Seaside Farmers Market.
Seaside farmers
Can't
market.
beat it. We run across a lot of different folks when we're traveling,
Mhm.
and we met this woman who said we had to go to Oyster Dome. She's like, you got to go to Oyster Dome, do the hike. The views are amazing.
If you're in Bellingham, gotta see Oyster Dome.
So we did it. We got off to a little bit of a late start.
Mhm.
We didn't do the math right. It ended up being a 9-mile hike.
We thought it was a 3 mile hike. We can't. Apparently, we can't read maps.
No. But we made it. It was our first hike into the forest here, and it's so green. The forests are very
Mhm.
different here. Lots of ferns, moss growing everywhere on everything. There's like green growing on top of green
Mhm. Yeah.
everywhere. There's also a lot of spiders.
Big spiders.
Big spiders, big webs. So I'm
Mhm.
always on high alert for spiders because I do not like spiders. But in general, the forests were beautiful, and the views from the top of Oyster Dome were amazing. It was
Mhm.
stunning. The view is of Samish Bay, the agriculture fields to the south, and then the San Juan Islands. And we got there kind of around sunset, so that
Mhm.
added to the beautiful views as well. We made it back to the truck before dark, so we didn't
Mhm.
have to hike through the forest in the dark. So that was a big plus also.
Yeah. So the other thing we wanted to check out in Bellingham that we heard about from multiple people was the mountain biking. It is kind of like a famous area for mountain biking, Galbraith Mountain, which is just east of town. And it was a beautiful ride, really amazing. Again, just like the hiking we've done here, incredible forests, like huge trees, really scenic. We also rode a little multi-use path around a lake that was a little more chill, and that was a good time. And we kind of had a magical experience finding like just thousands of ripe blackberries that were delicious that we were eating. We've since found out that those blackberries are everywhere in Washington, and they're more invasive than they are magical. There are millions of them taking over everybody's like forest and yard, but it was still magical for us when we found them for the first time. We've eaten a bunch more since then.
There's a lot of ferry routes around here
Mhm.
that someone else had told us about
It's
as
all
well.
islands. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's really cool. There's ferries that run from the mainland between all the islands to
Mhm.
Canada. So we decided to take a ferry
Yeah.
ride. We grabbed our bikes and we went to a small island called Shaw Island, which
Mhm.
is part of the San Juans. I'd never been on a ferry before, and it was really fun, and I love the culture. There's just
Mhm.
like this ebb and flow of like cars waiting for the ferry, and
Mhm.
then more people. Like as the ferry time gets close, there's like tons of cars, tons of people, everyone, and then everyone offloads off the ferry and then gets on the ferry,
Very.
and then the ferry takes off, and then the captain takes over, and then it's just kind of like a cheap cruise. We
Mhm.
took a packed lunch. We, had lunch, and Jason had a hams for
Of
lunch,
course.
snuck that on there, and we went along at a good clip and got to the island in no time. The
Yep.
captain made it really special. We were driving by this, or yeah, navigating by this house, and he came on the announcement and said that a retired pirate lived there,
Mm-hmm.
and that if the ferry got too close, we'd be shot at by their cannons. And sure enough, we got too close and were shot at. It was really
Yeah.
fun. You could tell they had fun with their jobs.
Pretty sure that was a retired ferry captain, probably in that cabin and not a pirate, but it was so cool.
It was very cool.
So in Shaw Island itself was really neat. I think the year-round population of Shaw Island's like 150 people. So it was like going back in time 40 or 50 years. It was cool. It had like a little general store at the ferry dock, one bar, post office, and that was it. And then the houses. And so we rode our bikes a couple miles across the island, checked out the scenery. There were tons of ditch apples and ditch pears, which I guess is pretty common everywhere in Washington, but the apples and the pears were good. So we picked a bunch of apples and pears and rode our bikes to a county park, which was the other thing on that. That's why we picked that island, actually. So there was nobody at the county park, so we just chilled at the beach, and we had a great afternoon.
Really
Water
relaxing.
was warm.
It was sunny.
Nice. Sunny, yeah.
It was like a perfect day.
So that pretty much wrapped up everything we wanted to do in Bellingham. And our next destination was going to be the Olympic Peninsula. So we thought, well, we'll stop and see the sights in Seattle on the way, like do one day in downtown Seattle, and we'll do it as we're driving from Bellingham to Olympic. That turned out to be a really dumb idea.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah, beyond wishful thinking. It was just like crazy steep hills, these tiny little roundabouts. I don't know how we got in and out of there without getting the camper hung up. We didn't really end up seeing anything. We drove around for hours, like waffling on where we were going to park the camper and what we were going to do. We tried, even unhitched, we couldn't fit the truck into the parking garages there because of the vertical clearance with the canoe on the truck. It was just a crazy situation. And there were also a lot of homeless in vehicles. There were like crazy defunct campers parked on the street. It was a nutty situation. Yeah. So we ended up, I think we spent like 3 hours just trying to figure out what to do and gave up on playing Seattle, and we drove south out into the suburbs and found a place to stay.
Yeah, we ended up finding a really great spot. We use an app called Harvest Host sometimes, and we found a brewery south of Seattle called North 47 Brewing Company.
It was sweet.
It was super friendly, local place. They let us park in their lot overnight, and we had some beers, and they were just really welcoming. They even had a picture of Highway 47 from Wisconsin in their bar.
Which was mind-blowing. Like Highway 47, that's like right outside the front door of my former house in Homelander. It was surprising.
It felt like it could have been a bar in central Wisconsin. So we felt really at home there. So thank you, Patrick, Virginia, and team. That was a great place for the stay and for us to reset for Seattle the next day.
Yeah. So, and we ended up chatting with those guys that own or that work at North 47. And they said, hey, why don't you go back to Seattle tomorrow and you can stash your camper and all your stuff behind the brewery building and just take the truck into Seattle. So that's what we did. Took the truck into Seattle, and that was cool. I'm glad we did it. It still was a little crazy, but we got to see Seattle. We did all the touristy stuff. We went to Cary Park, which is like the famous overlook. Looked at downtown Seattle for 5 minutes, took a selfie. I don't know. We walked through some sculpture garden that was pretty interesting. Olympic Park sculpture garden. It had one really cool windmill or like wind-driven sculpture that would move with the wind. We did the Pike's Market thing. If you Google Seattle, like one of the first things that comes up is this market.
It's
iconic. These guys like throw fresh fish around. People are buying fish and throwing fish through the air and stuff. So we went and watched that. The coolest thing we did, I think we had poke bowls at that market, and the fish there was amazing. It was delicious. Yeah. But a couple hours of that was enough, and we got out of there and headed on our way.
Yeah. We headed to further west to close to Olympic National Park, and we are currently in Lyre River Campground. And the state of Washington has this $30 Discover Pass that provides access to free campgrounds throughout the state, which is amazing. It's right on the Lyre River, which is about a half mile from the ocean. So it runs into the Strait of Juan de Fuca in the Pacific Ocean. And that is also a short hike from the campground. So we walked down there through the forest again, and the trees here are enormous. They're so big. There was a display in the visitor center of a tree a slice of a tree that had started growing in 1349. It was 676 years old. That's how big the trees are. They're just huge.
And there's a lot of them around. It's not like here's an old growth grove that we've preserved. It's just like everywhere you go, the trees are so big. Laura and I couldn't come close to wrapping our arms and joining hands around any of these trees. They're just huge. They're everywhere giant. You go.
Yeah. And then when we got to the ocean, where the river runs into the ocean, it was really cool. There was tons of birds. They must like love that ocean freshwater mix. They were just everywhere, eating and bathing themselves, and it was beautiful. It was a weekday morning. It was kind of cool. We had the whole beach to ourselves, so we did a lot of beach combing. It's fun. We both love to just pick around the beach. There's like rocks and shells and crabs and plants, and we had a really good time.
And then while we were here, we thought, we're right next to Olympic National Park, so that was definitely on the list. And we decided to do a day in the park. And one of the coolest things about this park is there's a hydropower dam that was removed in this area. It's inside the park. And when they removed that dam, it changed the water levels in the spring downstream of the dam, and it basically washed out a bunch of bridges on the park road. So that part of the park is now closed to vehicles. We decided to go into that area of the park. You can only enter on foot or by bike. It's a long bike. It's a 22-mile bike ride / hike to get up in there, but it's totally worth it. It's like a ghost town. It's really strange, but really cool. It's like national park facilities, but no people. We saw maybe a dozen people the whole day. So, and there's a cool informational display where they blew up that dam, but again, nobody there because you're the only ones there. So you get to have the whole place to yourself. The bike ride's a little rough. It's 8 miles straight uphill. It's like 8 miles, 8 or 9% grade. It climbs 4,000 feet. It's just, your quads are burning at the top of that ride. And then from there, it's a 3-mile climb on foot up to some natural hot springs. That was the eventual goal of the day, which was cool. It was kind of the hiking part. There's a lot of hike nude graffiti, and we wondered what that was about. And
we didn't have to wonder for long.
We didn't have to wonder for long. We did pass. The other dozen people up there several of them were nude.
Yeah,
nude hiking, nude hot springs. So we did not hike nude, nor did we hot spring nude. We kept our suits on, but we had a good time nonetheless. And probably the best part of the day was, after all that climbing, if you have your bike with you at the end of the day, you just get on and fly like 25 miles an hour, no pedaling, right back down the mountain, and you're done.
The other cool thing we saw that day on the way up there was the salmon migration to their spawning beds. So the Salduck River goes through the park also, and there's this little area on the river where there's like 2 little waterfalls that the salmon have to get up, and those poor salmon were trying so hard to get up that waterfall. You did really feel bad for them.
I wanted to help them. You just wanted to jump in there and help them. It was brutal watching them.
Yeah, they basically just fling themselves out of the water. Sometimes they hit a rock, sometimes they completely miss the
they
next level.
They can't see where they're going in the whitewater, so they're just salmon just shooting out of the whitewater, smacking their heads on the rocks, falling back in and floating downstream.
It was really something to see. It was really great timing on our part to be able to see that. They hatch in the river, and then they develop there for like a year or so. Then they go back out to the ocean and mature, and then come back to spawn. And then after spawning, they die. So we did see lots of carcasses also, and that provides nutrients for everything. Like animals eat it, they drag it into the forest.
Provides a special aroma for hikers in the area.
Yes, that's true. Also,
super rank. There were dead salmon carcasses.
Yeah, it was kind of gross and kind of sad, but it was neat to see. It was unique.
It was worth it. So I think after this, our plan is just to drive Highway 101 down the coast of Washington and then Oregon. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in our next video.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.